Okay, ready to start? Okay, both sides, we're very privileged to have a very special speaker with us this evening. We know that one of the basic foundations of Klal Yisrael is the essence of Kedusha. We say Mavdom Kashachol, Yisrael Amim, Yom Tov has Kedusha, Shabbos has Kedusha, we have Kedusha. Of course, the highest Kedusha is the Bet HaMikdash, the Har HaBayit. So we're very privileged to have Rabbi Glick, who is actually bringing to light the Kedusha of the Har HaBayit, Kedusha of the Bet HaMikdash. It's not just history, but it's really part of our everyday life. And I just want to mention another point that we know that we make various brachas on praises to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If a person survived an accident, he goes back and makes a bracha, shasla nes makom hazeh. Person makes a nes on something happened to his father, to his Rebbe, and the Ramah brings down. The Ramah says, "Yeshamram hu adin and ra adam shenasa lo nes mavarach alav." If you see someone that a great nes happened to, you make a bracha kamosh mavarach ala makom. Just like you make a nes on a place that a miracle took place. So certainly, if you see a person, you also make a bracha. So I would like to introduce Rabbi Glick, and I'd like to say,
Amen. Amen. Very much. Actually, we're all living through Nisim. Every single day, the very fact that we wake up and almost every step of our life, there's a nes, al nisecha v'al niflosecha shebechol yom imanu. Baruch Hashem, I thank you very much for having me here tonight. First time speaking at this yeshiva, and always a special thing to speak at a new yeshiva. Wish you all guys here hatzlacha and all whatever you're doing here and your time in Israel, and have a very constructive time in yeshiva. Just 2 days ago we marked Asara B'Teves, which is the first of 4 fast days that the Nevi'im were mitaking, commemorating the Churban of Bet HaMikdash. The first of 4, Asar B'Teves, was when Nebuchadnezzar comes to Yerushalayim, surrounds Yerushalayim, and puts it in siege. And then for several more months, the situation inside the city of Yerushalayim is people are dying of hunger, people are in terrible situation there. Until the 9th of Tammuz, a year and a half later, where he comes into the city, and we fast on the 17th of Tammuz, because that was the date of the second Bet HaMikdash, but the first Bet HaMikdash. He breaks in on the 9th of Tammuz, and then a month later, on the 9th of Av, is the final Churban, which Bet HaMikdash burns down in the process of 2 days, 9th and the 10th of Av. Finally, on Tzom Gedalia, we mark the fact they tried the effort to re-establish some kind of leadership, and then Rabbi Yishmael ben Matanya assassinates Gedalia ben Achikam. Actually, according to Rabbi Shimon, Teves was the 4th, not the 1st, because Rabbi Shimon says the fast is on the 5th day of Teves. And what happened on the 5th day of Teves? The Tanakh teaches us in the book of Yechezkel that on the 5th day of Teves, a palit comes from Eretz Yisrael and tells Yechezkel, you should know, the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed. Only 5 months later, 5 months after the Churban, does Yechezkel first find out about the Churban. And Rabbi Shimon says that Tzom HaAsiri is the fasting on the 5th day of Teves, when he found out that there was a Churban. When the Shmuah, when the rumor comes in that there was a churban, that's also enough to fast. We paskin like Rabbi Akiva. We fast on Asira B'Teves, and the siege begins. And it's interesting that about the churban, Yechezkel hears only 5 months later. But about the siege, how long after the siege did he hear about it? Be'etzem hayom hazeh. On that exact day, he hears that the siege begins. And actually, we pass about Rabbi Akiva because the very beginning of the siege, eventually we find out that is the beginning of the churban. By the way, from the Be'etzem hayom hazeh, the famous Abu Darham, who paskins that if Asara B'Teves would fall out on Shabbos, we would fast on Shabbos. It's interesting that everybody knows that Abu Darham, but that people don't realize that the Rambam and Rashi argue and don't agree with that. Mefurish and Rambam and Mefurish Rashi that Asara B'Teves is Nidche. But anyway, Abu Darham is a very famous. I think the only reason why the Abu Darham can allow himself to say that is because it doesn't fall out on Shabbos. So saying what's going to happen when we re-mekadesh the chodesh by the moon, the answer is very simple. Mirtz Hashem, when we mekadesh by the moon, we're not going to fast on Asar B'Teves anymore. So, Mirtz Hashem. So, anyway, I tried to point out these fast days, the whole picture. That Chazal or the Nevi'im, actually, if you medayik in the pasuk in the Zechariah, it's not the Nevi'im obligated us to fast on these days. As a matter of fact, in Zechariah Perek Zayin, there are messengers coming from Bavel asking Zechariah, should we continue fasting? We're talking about the 4th year of Dariavish, to build the Bet HaMikdash is in the process of being built. Should we continue fasting? And Zechariah gives him a long answer, but one of the things he says, did we ask you to fast? You began fasting. So if you the pshat, it seems that it's a minhag that was mekubal on the people. But in halacha, it's referred to as a minhag nevi'im because it appears already, divrei Kabbalah, it appears in the Tanakh. But what I'm trying to point out is that throughout history of Am Yisrael, we had so many different terrible tragedies. And Chazal didn't force us, didn't obligate us to fast, except for Tanis Esther, which is a different story. Didn't ask us to fast for anything. Even, not only that, even 100 years before the Churban, there's a much greater catastrophe. What happens 100 years before the Churban of Bayis Rishon? The Golus of 10 Shvatim. 90% of Am Yisrael are sent out to Golus. When was the end of that Golus? We're still waiting. We are Yehudim because we're Shevet Yehuda. The Kohanim are Leviim, but 90% of Am Yisrael are still somewhere we don't know where they are. I know there are different opinions, maybe in Nigeria, maybe in Ethiopia, maybe China. I don't know exactly, but they're in Golus. And Zecher LeGolus Aseret HaShvatim, we don't have in one single fast. But Zecher LeChurban HaMikdash, we have 4 fast days. What are we trying to understand from this is the central role that the Torah refers to about Bet HaMikdash. We live our lives. Bet HaMikdash is something, we know it appears there's somewhere in davening, but it's not really part of our life. In terms of Chazal, in terms of the Torah, in terms of the Tanakh, we see that 4 fast days, Zecher LeChurban. But not only that, Moshe Rabbeinu comes up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for 40 days. According to the pshat of the Torah, what does he do up there? I'm talking about the first time. He's sitting and learning a course, how to build the Mishkan. And it's not a lecturing. There's PowerPoint, there's presentations. Kamare Asher Atamare, HaKadosh Baruch Hu shows him exactly how he wants him to build each and every one of the kelim, each and every one of the yeriot, the curtains, the walls, the krushim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's what he calls it Moshe to teach him. we see that the Chalal in the Torah there's no other topic which is so much in length. Parshas Truma, Parshas Tetzaveh, Parshas Kisisa, part of it, Parshas Vayakel, Pkudei, Vayikra, Tzav, a whole parshas that are all talking about the Migdash, the Mishkan. The day of the establishing of the Mishkan itself appears in the Torah 3 different times. In Parshas Tetzaveh, in Parshas Tzav, in Parshas Shemini, and in Parshas Naso, Ba'alotcha. Korban Nasim, the HaKadosh of Aaron the Kohen, and still the 7 days of Miluyim. So we see that the whole concept of the Mishkan and Bet HaMikdash is not just another mitzvah. There's a mitzvah of not keeping kosher. There's a mitzvah of Shemitah. There's a mitzvah of Bet HaMikdash. No, the Bet HaMikdash is the whole heart of the whole thing. Therefore, when you establish a house, when you get married, you break a glass because there's no Bet HaMikdash. When you build a house, you leave something unpaved because there's no Bet HaMikdash. When you eat a piece of chocolate cake, you make an ala michi, you say thank you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for the delicious food, for all the food, for Tnuvat HaSadeh, Tnuvat Eretz Chemda, Ve'al Mizbachecha V'leichalecha U'vnei Yerushalayim. What's the connection? The connection is the fact that Bet HaMikdash is the center part of our whole life. To a point when Bet HaMikdash was Nechrav, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai comes and said, what are we going to do? How can Judaism continue? What kind of Torah is there going to be? We're going to be able to live without a lulav? Because only in the Bet HaMikdash they did 7 days. So he says, okay, now in your shul, you're going to take the lulav just to remember that that's what we did in the Bet HaMikdash. So he established takanah that we should know that there is Torah even without Bet HaMikdash. But the basic concept of Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates the world, and He wants us to build the Bet HaMikdash. Not only that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows that maybe somebody might have some kind of idea that Bet HaMikdash is something that falls out from heaven. HaKadosh Baruch Hu 250 times in the parashat of the Mishkan, He says, Ve'asu, Ve'asita, Vayas, Ve'chein ta'asu. Several times, again and again and again and again, so nobody should ever think that Bet HaMikdash is something that falls out from heaven. It's a mitzvah asik to build Bet HaMikdash. Every single one of the Rishonim. Definitely the Monei HaMitzvahs, the Rambam, the Ramban, the Ravid, the Bahag, the Smag, the Chinuch, they all count in one of the mitzvahs, a mitzvah to build Bet HaMikdash. So the Chinuch says it's not a mitzvah on every single person, it's a mitzvah on the people as a people. But we have to understand that it's a mitzvah for us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, and connected that, we have to build the Bet HaMikdash. So this is just should be in front of us at all times to understand that that's our goal. Our goal is to go and build Bet HaMikdash. That's our goal. We are obligated to do it. Of course, we have to take into consideration different political situations, different kind of reality, which are all simanim from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we can't do it now because. But if tomorrow morning, President of the United States would call up Netanyahu and say, Mr. Guy, go ahead and build. And don't worry, the Muslims are going to do anything, I'll stop them. We would have a chiyuv to build. Okay, so we have to understand that, okay, so the HaKadosh Baruch Hu presently brought us to a situation where we can't build politically. It's not that politically we can't build. HaKadosh Baruch Hu apparently wants us still, but we have to be ready as soon as there will be an opportunity to go do it. Yehuda HaMaccabi, your next door neighbor, he lives here in the area of Modi'in. In his time, the situation was much worse than it is today. But he understands there's a moment, he has a chance. HaKadosh Baruch Hu accompanies him and he overcomes the Greeks in several different battles. And he gets the chance and he understands he has to rebuild. He has to rebuild with the neglected Bet HaMikdash, which was neglected for 3 years. He has to repair what's ruined. Baruch Hashem, we had the schus of living in a wonderful generation. A wonderful generation. Every single morning, as soon as they finish Moida Ani Lefanecha Melech Chai V'Kayam Shechzarta B'Nishmati, you should immediately remind yourself, Moida Ani Lefanecha, that you gave us the schus to live in such an era where Am Yisrael is flourishing in Eretz Yisrael, Torah is flourishing in Eretz Yisrael. We're very close to a point where the majority of Am Yisrael will be in Eretz Yisrael, unless you include Aseret HaShvatim, then we're still far from the majority. But we can do what we can do. We can compromise. Those of you learning Daf Yomi, we just remember that Rabbi Yehuda says that Eretz Yisrael is all the way till the ocean. So if we paskin that all the Aseret HaShvatim, we could always say that all the way to the ocean is Eretz Yisrael, and then don't worry, they won't all be coming here. But we are zocha to live in an era where Kadosh Baruch Hu brings Am Yisrael gradually to process. We're coming back home. The people of Israel are coming back home to their homeland. Am Yisrael, and there's nothing like it, parallel to it, in the history of all of mankind. No other nation was ever sent away from its homeland and returned to its homeland. Not after 2,000 years, not even after 20 years. Any other nation that was uprooted from its homeland, that was the end of the nation. And here we are, after 2,000 years, we're coming back home, coming back to the land, using the same Torah, the same names of the places, the same nation. I don't think there's anything more amazing than that. Or actually, there is one thing that's more amazing than that. The fact that this whole process is described word by word in the Torah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm going to send you out away to all over the world. And then he says, wherever you go, I'm going to bring you all back. And to see this happening in front of our eyes, even just 2-3 decades ago, nobody believed it. I remember in the 1980s, one of the most prestigious professors, from Russian Jewry, Professor Yirmiyahu Branover, he writes a big article in one of the newspapers saying, why are we making an effort to bring immigration from the former Soviet Union? By the way, I love saying the word former Soviet Union. Say it again and again, former Soviet Union. But at the time it was Soviet Union. And he says, why are we making so much effort to bring Aliyah from Soviet Union, trying to convince them to open the gates? Even if they open the gates tomorrow morning, maybe we'll have 50,000 Jews coming from the Soviet Union, not more than that. And less than a decade later, more than 1 million immigrants come from the former Soviet Union. These are miracles that we see with our own eyes. These are things that we have to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu every single day. Even if things are not exactly as we like them to be. Even if we could give HaKadosh Baruch Hu a few pieces of advice how to improve things. But Baruch Hashem, the fact that we're living the way we are, where we are, is definitely a miracle. But then, 19 years later, Am Yisrael is approaching a major catastrophe. And when I say a major catastrophe, I mean something almost compared to a Holocaust. 200 million Muslims surrounding a population of 2 million Jews. Okay, we're talking about 2 million Jews. That's almost a quarter of what we have here today. 2 million Jews here. That's all there is here. And the 200 million Muslims are determined to destroy and wipe out the state of Israel. And that's the feeling. Feeling in the street is that the state of Israel is coming to an end. Our famous Minister of Foreign Affairs, Abba even running around the world begging, help us just survive. Please, protect us. People are joking around with the last one, please not forget to turn off the lights at the airport. There are preparations made for 100,000 graves. That is the feeling. That's when we established the state of Israel, there were 600,000 Jews here. And in the war, we lost 6,000 victims. So now we're facing something much more difficult. Where all the armies, the Arab armies are participating, there'll be close to 100,000 victims. We have to get ready for that. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu had other plans. And within 2 days, or actually one day, the very first day, we managed to overcome the Air Force, the Egyptian Air Force, and the Syrian Air Force. We wipe out. The IDF wipes out, surprisingly, shockingly, the entire Air Force of the Syrian army and the Egyptian army. And we beg King Hussein of Jordan, don't take part in this war. It's not yours. But King Hussein gets a message from Nasser, from Egypt. I'm on my way to Tel Aviv. And he says to himself, well, I'm not going to lose out. I want to take part in this also. And within 6 days, we returned back home to the entire, at least the entire western part of the land, including the Golan, Yehuda, Shomron, Sinai, and the peak of it all, Yerushalayim, the old city of Yerushalayim. And on top of that, Har HaBayit. Mota Gur, the commander of the paratroopers, announces, Har HaBayit biyadenu. Temple Mount is in our hands. Har HaBayit biyadenu. And what is Har HaBayit? Har HaBayit is the peak of it all. The place where HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Makom asher bachar l'shaken shmo sham. The venue where he chose to rest his divine presence. Har HaBayit is the only holy place in Jewish halacha. When the Mishnah in Masechet Kelim counts 10 Eser Kedushoten, 3 of them are the whole Eretz Yisrael, cities that are surrounded with walls, Yerushalayim, the other 7 are all Har HaBayit. Har HaBayit is what's called in Tanakh Tzion. Al Har Tzion Sheshamem Shualim Hilchubo. As Yirmiyahu says in the book of Eichel. V'sechazena eineinu b'shuvcha leTzion, as we say davening. Or when we bench, we say Rachem Hashem Elokeinu al Yisrael Amecha. The nation is called Yisrael. Al Yerushalayim Irecha. The city is called Yerushalayim. V'al Tzion Mishkan Kvodecha. Tzion, the place where HaKadosh Baruch Hu rests his kvod. Mishkan Kvodecha. That's Har HaBayit. That's been the holy place for Am Yisrael ever since David HaMelech bought it from Arna HaYevusi. 2 Bet HaMikdash stood there. It was the center of Am Yisrael. The center of our dreams for the past 2,000 years, ever since Churban. Har HaBayit. But then, the defense minister of Israel gets the message that Har HaBayit is in our hands. He takes his head and he says, oh my God, what did I do? Who needs that Vatican in our hands? And he announces, Har HaBayit is going back to the Muslims. And he creates a new holy place for the Am Yisrael. He wipes out 110 families, houses, within 1 week. He straightens out the plaza there. And he tells us that we have the Western Wall Plaza. That's what we've been waiting for 2,000 years. You didn't know about it? Now you know. If you look up in Google what it says about Kotel Maravi, the Western Wall, it says, even in the website of Iriyat Yerushalayim, the only most ancient remnant of Beis HaMikdash. The only most ancient remnant of Beis HaMikdash. It's not a remnant. It's not of Beis HaMikdash. It's not the only one. And it's not the most ancient one. Kotel Maravi, 60 meters wide, is part of an entire wall which is 488 meters long, which is one of four, which are all four standing: the eastern one, the western one, the northern one, the southern one. And not only that are they standing, but it's a miracle that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did to us. Several decades before the Churban, HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows he's about to send us out to Golos for 2,000 years. And he brings this Magluman, he brings this guy who's building and building and building and building, Herod, and he builds walls around Har HaBayit. And these walls last for 2,000 years. And of course, in our concept, a wall that lasts for 2,000 years, we can't, nothing, we don't think of anything that old. Everything that after 10, 20 years, we have repair, and after 50 years, after 70 years, of course, 2,000 years. But even what Herod himself built, Herod built so many different things around the country. We have remnants. In Caesarea, we have remnants. In Masada, we have remnants. In Herodian, we have remnants. Only two things that Herod built are still standing as he left them. The walls of Har HaBayit and the building around Me'arat HaMachpelah. Those are the only two things that he built that are still standing. So here we are with those four gigantic walls. When you go to the Kotel, you only can see 1/3. 2/3 are still low down. If you go to the temple with the Western Wall tunnels, you can walk to the end of the Western Wall. You see the size of the stones there. You see how deep it is. And that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu left for us, that we should come back here and we should know where Har HaBayit is. Not only is that, but we have this big plaza, 36 acres, 144 dunam, 140,000 square meters. It's big enough to build a football stadium, baseball stadium. But Baruch Hashem, nobody built there a football stadium. Nobody built there a basketball stadium. Nobody built there a baseball stadium. Nobody built there a mall. Nobody built there a Luna Park. Nobody even built their buildings of real estate. The place there is empty, except for one building in the center of the plaza. The Dome of the Rock. The dome built to protect that holy rock for Am Yisrael. The dome built to protect that holy rock of Am Yisrael. It was built by a Muslim in the 7th century, Abdul Malik. He built it to protect the holy stone for Am Yisrael. His son builds a mosque, El Aqsa Mosque, all the way on the south, far away from that center building, off the original Har HaBayit. And there we have that building protecting the stone. And that brings us to another miracle. When Yeshayahu Hanavi says to us that all the nations will be streaming, flooding, v'naharu elav kol ha'amim, will be coming to Har Beit Hashem, v'yoreinu midrachav, Ki mitzion teitzei Torah udvar Adonai Yerushalayim. Yeshayahu was talking in a generation where all of the world were idol worshippers. And there was only one nation who was worshipping HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he says to them, all the nations will be coming here. And here we see in front of our eyes people coming from all over the world to Eretz Yisrael, and the entire world pretty much becoming a monotheistic world. These are all hashgacha. This is all direct hashgacha from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I don't know if you followed, there was a document that the Pope put out last Chanukah. For the first time he announces that Christianity was made a mistake for 2,000 years, and that God still has his covenant with the people of Israel. Not that we need the Pope to tell us that, but the fact that he recognizes that. He says some great things are happening in this world. Great things are happening in this world. Baruch Hashem, we receive this wonderful present from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we give it up. And we decide, no, we don't need it. No, thank you. And we plant roots deep in the hearts of the people of Israel. That the Jewish people, we have a holy place. It's called the Western Wall. Temple Mount, that's a Muslim place. Come to Jerusalem, you visit. You want to visit, you want to see. You can go see the Christian church, the Holy Sepulchre, the Christian holy place. The Muslim holy place is the Temple Mount, and the Jewish holy place is the Western Wall. But not only is that the situation, but we totally disconnect. And we leave the place totally neglected. The place where HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself said, I chose to rest my divine presence there, the Shaken Shmisha. Throughout history, we know for a fact that always anybody who could would go up to Har HaBayit. The earliest ever record of anybody going to the Western Wall, to the Kotel HaMaravi, maybe the 17th century, maybe the 16th century, I don't think so. I think the 17th century. Before that, anybody who could went up to Har HaBayit. The Meiri teaches us Mefurash, Masechet Shavuot, Daf Tet Zayin. The Rambam asks to mark the 6th day of Cheshvan, the day that it was Ochet and Mitpalel on Har HaBayit. The Maharit, the Radvad, who was the chief rabbi of Yerushalayim 500 years ago, talks about going onto Har HaBayit. Yes, there are 5% of Har HaBayit, which is the Azara, Machaneh Shechina, which Tamei Meis is not allowed in there. First of all, it's Machlokas. Rambam, Ravid. According to the Ravid, it's probably no Isser Kares, maybe not even be an Isser, but we pass him by Rambam. So 5% of Har HaBayit is Isser Kares for Tamei Meis. But the rest of Har HaBayit, 95%, even if we're doubted exactly where the place is, we still have 70% of Har HaBayit where there is no problem to go up after you go to the mikveh, and you go up there. The price we are paying for the fact that we don't go there is a very expensive price. Har HaBayit is in the hands of the cruelest of cruel. People who are calling in the name of Allah to kill, to commit suicide to kill. This is who the hands that we gave Har HaBayit over to. People who, instead of Har HaBayit being a world center, the Naharoil of Kol Ha'amim ki mitzion teitzei Torah v'Hashem Yerushalayim lo yisagoyel lo yicherev lo yibudul milchama. Instead of ki beiti beit tefillah lechol yikarei lechol ha'amim, instead of Har HaBayit being a place where everybody's coming and calling Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad, We have one religion taking over, but not only one religion, one radical sect of the religion. The Muslim Brotherhood, which is outlawed already in Egypt. They are the ones that decide who can go up to the Temple Mount. We gave it to them. They are the ones who decide what a Jew can do when he goes up the Temple Mount. When I started going up to Har HaBayit 25 years ago, we were very few. Maybe 2,000 Jews who would go up to Har HaBayit, or maybe 2 rabbis who supported it. Rav Goren, Rav Ariel. Baruch Hashem, today we reached a point where more than 300 rabbis support it. In the past year, we had 15,000 Jews who ascended to Har HaBayit. One of the first things I did was I announced we're going to celebrate the day that the Rambam asked us to celebrate. Vav Cheshvan. So 8 years ago, on Vav Cheshvan, we started a minhag every year to have our annual meeting on Vav Cheshvan. In honor of the Rambam, B'mishter Hodaya al Hashem. This year is exactly 850 years. But a year ago, on Vav Cheshvan, Tafshin Ayin Hey, October 29th, 2014, we had this event. We had like 300 people there. Rabbis spoke, members of Knesset spoke, other different public figures. Baruch Hashem, it was very, very exciting meeting. A lot of Torah taught there. At the end of the event, at the end of the convention, around 9:30 p.m., everybody went home. We stood around mingling with a few people. Finally, at 10 o'clock, my wife went to pick up the car and to pick me up, and I carried all the material that we were giving out at the convention to the car. And I was accompanied by 2 friends of mine, Shai and Maria. We walk out of the Begin Center in Yerushalayim. My wife's on the phone talking to a friend of hers, Hadassah, whose son was in the hospital that day, went through surgery. And I go to the back of the car and I put the stuff in the car. And then I turn around and they're standing in front of me. A person on a motorcycle. He stops the car, stops his motorcycle right in front of me. He's all black, he has a white helmet, short black beard. I look at him, I don't know who he is. And he starts talking to me, he says, "I'm very sorry." I don't know what he's sorry about, who he is. I don't know if he's Sephardi, Ashkenazi, religious, not religious, Jew, non-Jew. So I get close to hear what he's sorry about. And of course he takes out his pistol and he shoots 4 bullets, center of my body, from a foot away. He drives away. Shai and Maria run away because they're sure he's going to shoot them. My wife tells her friend that Yehuda was just shot, please call an ambulance. She hides under the steering wheel. I look at myself, I see I have a bullet in my hand, I see my hand is, bone is pretty much crushed. I see that I'm bleeding. I run a little bit, make a few steps, like 20 yards. I reach the sidewalk, I fall down. Shai and Maria start walking back towards me. And Maria says, "Look how pale he is." And Shai says, "We just witnessed the murder. Go take care of Yafi, my wife. I'll take care of Yehuda." Shai bends down to me, he rips off my shirt. And he says to me in the ear, something I'll never forget ever in my whole life. "Yehuda, don't leave us, we need you." And he takes off the shirt and he starts trying to block the blood. He sees the 4 different bullet holes. They're all bleeding. And I lost my conscience. And Baruch Hashem, within moments, ambulances come, police come. He's taken off to the hospital, Shari Tzedek. 13 minutes after the shot, at 10:04, the shot, at 10:17, I'm already lying in the trauma room of the emergency room of Shari Tzedek Hospital. Considered a critical situation. They take me into the CT, MRI, and they see that not a single bullet hit my heart. Bullet over here missed the main blood vessel. I have some bullets, or one bullet that went through my lungs. A bullet went through my intestines. 10 days, I'm in coma, 9 different kinds of surgery. Baruch Hashem. Kadosh Baruch Hu saves my life. Thanks to all the tefillos around the world. Thanks to the wonderful medical system we have here in Israel. That very night that I was shot, the Israeli security services investigate. They take away all the cameras of all the institutions in the area. And at 4 a.m. they already find out who it is. They knock on his door. He goes onto the roof, and that same gun that he used to shoot at me, he shoots at them. He doesn't know that on the roof are waiting for him 4 special unit policemen. And they get rid of him, and that's the end of him. Baruch Hashem, Kadosh Baruch Hu accompanies me personally. And here I am alive. And I want you to understand that in Israel, we've gone through a lot of different terror attacks, as you all know. But assassination attempts, we haven't had that many. Assassination attempt is a person who collects intelligence, he spectates, he follows you until he gets the exact point where he can get rid of you. And he's totally involved in one mission. And all the assassination attempts that I know of here in Israel all concluded what we would call success of the assassin. Baruch Hashem, I was very lucky. Kadosh Baruch Hu decided he had other plans for me. He decided my mission was not over. The mission of calling people to Am Yisrael, to connect to Bet HaMikdash, to connect to Har HaBayit. And I was makabel on myself that as much as I have, as long as I live, as long as I have the koach, to go around and talk to people, and anybody wherever I'm invited, I can come and tell people Har HaBayit is waiting for us. Because the biggest miracle was not the fact that he saved my life, and not the fact that we got rid of the assassin. But that very person who shot me, he didn't shoot me because he didn't like the color of my beard. He shot me, as he said, you are an enemy of El-Aqsa. He wanted to touch the symbol of the connection between Am Yisrael and Har HaBayit. And that was his efforts were all devoted to that point, to get rid of me. To get rid of the connection between Am Yisrael and Har HaBayit. And not only did he not succeed, but that very moment was a major milestone. Changed the whole attitude. Here in Eretz Yisrael, in the world, Har HaBayit is now on the table at all times. Amongst ourselves, people are trying to understand what's our next step, how we connect to Har HaBayit. Baruch Hashem, I'm personally invited to speak several times a day, all over the country. Hesder yeshivas, universities, high schools, shuls. But the topic is there. You can't ignore it anymore. Am Yisrael is ready for the next step. Now, like every single other step in history, Kadosh Baruch Hu has his wonderful ways. There's always those who are running ahead, and there was always those who are trying to stop them. And it has to be that way. Just like every single car has to have a gas pedal and has to have brakes. Because if chas v'sholom you have a car without a brakes, I know that many youngsters who have a new license would prefer cars without brakes, but chas v'sholom. But on the other hand, if you have only brakes, you can't continue. Eilu ve'eilu divrei Elim Chaim. When the Chassidus movement began, they were considered apikorsim. You can't count them for a minyan. Cherem. They were right, and they were right. And so too, when the Zionist movement began, and there were those who were fully with Zionism, and those who were against it, and they were right, because every single spiritual movement needs the two together. So those who choose to follow the 300 rabbis, very major rabbis, yes, I know that they're not the majority, but they're very major rabbis, at least in the religious Zionist movement, from Rav Dov Lior and Rav Dudkevich and Rav Yakim Levanon, all the way to Rav Sherlo and Rav Benny Lau, and in the middle, Rav Tzvanya Drori, Rav Druckman, Rav Nachum Rabinovich, Rav Baruch Hashem, any rabbis. 300 rabbis. Those who want to make the step and go up to Har HaBayit with Torah, definitely welcomed. But even those who don't want to, because they feel that they don't want to go against the majority of the poskim. Even though if you look at the majority of the poskim throughout history, we're way off. We're way on the majority of those who are supported. But even if those who don't want to go to Har HaBayit, if when you go to the Kotel, you remind yourself, I'm not going to the Kotel. I would like to go to Har HaBayit, but I don't want to go because my rabbi doesn't allow me. But when you go there, you should understand that my goal is Har HaBayit. To make that switch in your head, to put the Beis HaMikdash in the center of your life. Chafetz Chaim says that anybody who davens for Beis HaMikdash and doesn't learn about Beis HaMikdash is lying to himself. It's like he compares it to a person who invites people to the wedding, and he invites all of his friends to come to my wedding, and half an hour before the wedding begins, he reminds himself to reserve a hall and to order catering. You can't do it that way. And he says that anybody who says 3 times a day, and doesn't prepare to understand what building Beis HaMikdash is all about, he's lying to himself. That's the word. I wouldn't say it if the Chafetz Chaim didn't say it. So preparation of getting there. In my eyes, we are mechuyev. We're mechuyev to go there and prevent the Chilul Hashem of giving people a feeling that Am Yisrael is not interested in Har HaBayit. And anybody who wants, it's not very sophisticated. All of our wives do it every single month. You wash yourself, you comb your hair, you brush your teeth, you clean your hairs, etc., etc., and you go to the mikveh, and you go up to Har HaBayit with somebody who knows every single day from 7:30 to 10, Sunday through Thursday. Har HaBayit is open for non-Muslims. If you want to do it, you're welcome to do it. Enough rabbanim to trust. If you don't want to, at least make that change in your life and remind yourself that we have it's not stam that we have those 4 fast days in honor of Beis HaMikdash. It's not stam. That's 200 of 613 mitzvahs are dependent on Beis HaMikdash. It's not stam that the 50% of the Torah talks about the Mikdash. It's not stam that 50% of the Nevi'im, more than that, are about Beit HaMikdash. It's not stam the 50% of Torah Shabbal Peh, Kodshim, Taros, half of Moed, half of part of Zerayim are talking about Beit HaMikdash. If you're missing the connection to Har HaBayit, you're mixing the connection to Beit HaMikdash, you're missing the real thing. If you go to your Seder of Pesach and think that that's what the whole thing is all about, you're missing the whole thing. If you think all that Judaism has to it itself is something spiritual, intellectual, the Talmud, of course the Talmud is a very important thing. But Migdash, Baruch Hu created heaven and earth, and He wants us to put His presence inside the world. Be'ezrat Hashem, Mirz Hashem, u'bizoche mimkomcha malkeinu tofia v'timloch aleinu, כי מחכים אנחנו לך. ועינינו תראינה מלכותך. Mirz Hashem will zoche to see that the entire world will announce Yimloch Hashem L'olam L'Ma'ach Tzion. We'll see the world announcing Vahi Hashem Melech Al Kol Haaretz Bayom Hu Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. Anybody wants to ask any questions, you're more than welcome. Okay.
It seemed to me that the next chiyuv to go to Har HaBayit is Korban Pesach. My question is, really, why is it that it seems to be the Haredi world is not involved? We're talking about the famous Chubut Chassam Sofer, where you have a chiyuv to do it. Maybe we should have a focus on building a mizbeach. That should be the next focus, in my humble opinion. And a good chance that if we excavate there, we'll find the old mizbeach. And I think if the Haredi world will be involved in that, things will change in the Knesset.
I'm sure if we would have 50,000 Jews today demanding that we want to be Korban Pesach, things would be different. Understand that Korban Pesach is one of two mitzvot aseh. There's not a single other mitzvot aseh that if you don't do it, you're mechayev koros. And every single one is mechayev. Bris Milah and Korban Pesach. Bris Milah is only men and only one time in your lifetime. Korban Pesach is every single year. Every single year we're mechuyev to bring a Korban Pesach. To build a mizbeach is the simplest thing. Within 2 hours you can build a mizbeach. Your question is a wonderful question.
About knowing the right place of mizbeach.
The place of the mizbeach is 30 amos by 30 amos, pretty much. We know, even according to all the different opinions, if you move it to all different directions, you can have at least 4 amos by 4 amos, but the minimum of the mizbeach is amma barum shlosh amot. Is the minimum of the mizbeach. You can have a place where all the shittas is the place, and you can build a mizbeach. That's not a problem. The problem is, do we want to? And people think, what's a korban? Why, you can bring a korban, you can bring a korban. A month ago, in the entire United States, everybody were roasting turkey. And celebrating Thanksgiving. What's Korban Pesach? We all sit around the barbecue in Yerushalayim, and you say, Hallel to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when you look to Har HaBayit. That's what it's all about. Every family, every mishpacha, every family together, every chabura, sitting together, and mekayim the mitzvah of Korban Pesach. Every single person is mechuyev. The problem is that's something we're not used to for 2,000 years. It takes time to get people to get used to doing it. To my humble opinion, any change, something that people are very difficult to make changes. I think that even something much simpler in my eyes, cheles, which is a mitzvah aseh, and I think that today it's already 90% of the, for sure that this is the right cheles. But still, people don't want to make the change. We see that many different things. For people to make a change, takes a lot. But B'ezrat Hashem, I'm sure that our children will be zochah to bring a Korban Pesach. I'm sure that, yes, but your question is much better than my answer. We have a mitzvah to bring a Korban Pesach, and as soon as the demand comes, today, only 15,000 Jews are sent to Har HaBayit every single year, this year, compared to 2.5 million Muslims. So the world will continue referring to the place as a Muslim place. When we get to a point where at least 50,000, 100,000 Jews go out to Har HaBayit, it'll make a change. And we have to know that our job, our mission, is to try to push Yimir Hashem. As soon as HaKadosh Baruch Hu will allow us, we will be zocha. As soon as we wake up the hearts of the people, part of getting ready for Bet HaMikdash is also preparing the hearts of people. Yimir Hashem, I hope we'll be zocha. Yes?
I know, I'm sure in many other places, but I just know in Gemara Shabbos it talks about this certain type of haircut that the Kohen Gadol used to have. What exactly was that?
I don't know. Sorry. Maybe Rashiva knows.
It's a short haircut, but like what is that?
He didn't have payas. You're not allowed to wear. You're not allowed to have payas in Bet HaMikdash. You have to cut your hair short once every 30 days. And if you don't cut your hair, Kohen's not allowed to work in Bet HaMikdash. Not only Kohen, any Kohen, but I don't know any. I'm not sure. I don't
I just
know.
want to say that the root of one curve to the center of the other curve. So it's difficult to do. But
Yeah.
You said that if it weren't for political reasons, then we should rebuild the Bet HaMikdash.
Yeah.
But would we not be able to rebuild it to Tumah?
Tumah Hadra B'Tzibur. Mean that there's no reason why you can't build it. If everybody's Tumah, then you can build it. Just like Korban Pesach, you can also, if everybody's B'Tumah, you can bring it. Yeah. You want to add something?
Look, I mean, back to the measurements. Do we know, like, how do we know what an alma is? How do we know? How can we build a base measurement? Can you build a base measurement without a navi, without Mashiach? Or someone say.
It's a mitzvah asay v'asuli Migdal. It's not dependent on any navi.
Hashem told Moshe how to build the Mishkan.
But so we know that Shlomo HaMelech didn't get the instructions from anybody, and Chagai Hanavi yelled at the people, why aren't you building? And we have in the mitzvah, if all the Rishonim counted as a mitzvah, it's a mitzvah.
Some surface, the famous Trubri said they should build one.
Yeah, it's a mitzvah to build. It's a mitzvah to build Bet HaMikdash. I mean, okay, look, when we start working on it, Baruch Hashem, the Machon HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, they're preparing many of the vessels. And all the vessels they prepare there according to halacha, and they discuss all the questions. But we paskin. You can't, just like every other thing, we paskin. You can't be machmer like Rabbeinu Tam at the entrance of Shabbos and the exit of Shabbos. I mean, there are certain things we paskin with this, we paskin with that, we paskin. They're klalei halacha. So if we can paskin, that's the koach of psika. We paskin halacha, and we pretty much know in the Amma we know. We understand in the time of the Bet HaMikdash, which Amma did they have? The Chazon Ish or the Chaim Noach? The answer is this is the Amma they have. They weren't working with microscopes.
What was it, 5 or 6 tvachim?
Seder. So the Gemara, there's a halacha. The halacha says kol amot amma shel chamisha tvachim, which is 6. Everything is, the Rambam is very simple, very clear. You read it; it explains exactly where you need 5 ammas and where you need 5 tvachim, where you have 6. Yeah.
I mean, I might be misremembering. The Rambam at the end though says the Mashiach will come and build the Bet HaMikdash.
At the end of Hilchas Melachim, the Rambam describes Mashiach, what Mashiach will do. He says Mashiach will bring back Am Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael. Does that mean we have to wait in Chutz La'aretz? He says Mashiach will mechadesh shmitin. Does that mean we're not allowed to do shmita now? He says what the object of Mashiach, what he brings at the end of Hilchas Melachim, is that whatever is not finished by the time Mashiach comes, he'll finish. But in Hilchas Beit HaBchira, where the end of halachas, he always brings the Riyagoda, but even in Hilchas Beit HaBchira, he brings it as a mitzvah. Mitzvah asay the breath. There's no bias. Li'ol muchan lakrir b'korbanot, like the Rambam says specifically. So he says it's a mitzvah, and he specifically says in Igeret Teiman that there's not a single mitzvah that is dependent on Mashiach. So in the end of Hilchas Melachim, he says, yeah, the Mashiach's job is to finish up whatever is not done, but it doesn't mean we have to sit and wait for Mashiach to do things. Seder, yeah.
Just when they gave, where was the Rabbanim to our ship when they gave it over to the Arabs? I mean, Ram says, "Asa to let go and walk up there." I mean, how come no one spoke up at that time? They say they should have left it. No one go, no man's land. No one goes. I mean, how can you give it to the Arabs? Ram says, "Asa for a go to go up there."
Your questions are so painful. But I'm not sure it's like that Moshe Dayan called up the chief rabbi to ask him to do.
But where's the
I know that Rav Goren, he kicked out Rav Goren from there. Rav Goren wanted to be there and he kicked him out. And by the way, the Rav Goren did the same thing in Ma'arat Machpelah. Till then, Jews were only allowed to the 7th stair. If God forbid you go to the 8th stair, then Rav Goren came over there and said, "Listen, I'm the Baal Bayit," and he walks in. And if he wouldn't have done that, we would probably still be waiting on the 7th Madrega also. So wherever we were zoche, but we can't neglect it, and it's our mission. Shirkoach, Mirz Hashem. Next year we'll celebrate the Asar B'Teves, as the Rav Chaya says. Yeah, Sasan V'Simcha, Mishtav Yom Tov. So Mirz Hashem.